Let me go ahead and give you a little bit of a preview of the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and an overview of some of our programs. And then we're going to transition into Leah talking about the Sci-Girls strategies. And then at the end, we're going to have a pretty active discussion, I hope, about the approaches that the Cornell Lab of Ornithology uses for teacher and youth outreach, and how those connect to the Sci-Girls strategies. And I have to say, today was the lab's holiday party, and I am wearing a jingly sweater. So if you hear occasional jingles, it is not Santa coming down, it is my holiday sweater. I'm not sure if that's picking up, but I feel like every time I move, I hear the jingles. Never do a webinar in a jingly sweater. All right, well, we work, Kelly and I work at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and we're a membership-based institution in Ithaca, New York. We have a really global reach. Our mission is to interpret and conserve the Earth's biological diversity in 3 ways: research, education, and citizen science focused on birds. And in the education program, Kelly and I and the rest of our staff and students really try to create innovative resources and training, such as the webinar you're attending today, that build science skills and inspire young people to connect to their local habitats, explore biodiversity, and engage in citizen science projects. And basically, we have 3 pillars in our program. The first being nature connection, getting kids outside and giving them a sense of place, providing fun, hands-on activities, citizen science, and on into inquiry investigations that build real science practices. And I'm going to share some examples across those 3 pillars. And later when Leah starts, she's going to share the strategies that help us reach girls and other audiences really well through STEM. And so I'd like for you to keep in your mind how these 3 pillars connect with those Sci-Girls strategies. Let's go ahead and start with that 3rd pillar, or that 1st pillar rather, and really encourage you to share your own experiences if you have them. I know we've got folks here that work in parks and nature centers and that sort of thing. But nature is important, and one might argue it's as important as ever as we as educators connect youth to the outdoors, because kids are growing up without those connections to nature. There's a new syndrome, I would say, or disorder coined by Richard Louv, nature deficit disorder. And the symptoms of that nature deficit disorder are things such as attention difficulties and obesity and emotional and physical illnesses. And there are ties to not having enough time to play, not having enough time or access to get into green space for these problems happening in young people. Whereas connecting to nature, research shows time spent in nature is good for your overall health and well-being. It can help improve your cognitive ability. For example, boost your concentration and attention span. It benefits people's mood and sense of happiness. It reduces stress. It increases the number and quality of your social connections, and it boosts physical health and well-being. And this is true for both K-12 students as well as adults. So in K-12 students, it's been shown to do things like boost test scores. And for adults, the quality and quantity of our work goes up if we, for example, have a window office or go outside for some fresh air. And nature connection is so important, and getting outside is so important that Cornell University will actually prescribe nature to students as a way to help them realize their full potential. So nature is super important. That 2nd pillar that I shared is citizen science. Anyone want to share their own concept of what citizen science is?
And just a quick reminder to folks to please send to all panelists and attendees. So right above where you type in the chat window, switch to all panelists and attendees.
Right, thank you, and that drop down of the 2. share a definition of citizen science or what your concept is, if you've ever done it with youth before. And it's totally okay if this is a completely new term for you. Especially on a webinar, we don't get the immediate gratification of hands flying up or interested looks, so we just wait. Yeah, thank you, Kathy. Everyday people. You see contributing to scientists, providing research. Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely. I love this idea that the public can engage in real time in larger scientific research. And I appreciate you sharing all those projects that you all have worked on. And I'll share a few projects myself. Oops. Basically, as you shared in the chat window, in citizen science, people report observations using basic scientific protocols. The cool thing about citizen science is there are projects ranging from local, like backyard, very focused projects through global projects. Projects focused as big as galaxies, for example, night sky watches, to microscopic. And data gathering that is both just computer-based, that you actually don't have to go outside, to projects that really have an outdoor local emphasis. Wide variety of projects to become involved in. Many of them are outdoor based and locally based. And one of the things that all of these projects have in common is that they help scientists answer real world questions. So the data and information you're collecting is in service to something that goes beyond you. And there's also that concept of helping scientists to do their work. And I think these themes might come up again in what Leah will share too. In terms of projects, basically everything A to Z, everything ants to zebras. Many scales of projects. Some of these, most of the ones I've got listed here are either nationwide in scope or international, or in fact global. And again, one thing that I think is really impactful for young people, perhaps especially girls and underserved audiences, is that their counts really matter. You know, it's not just that you're collecting data that's later thrown into the garbage or maybe used to determine your grade and nothing more, but that your counts are going to someplace larger. I know kids think it's cool when they're submitting data for example, our eBird project, that their data is really going to Cornell University and adults really care about it, and that's so cool to them, and that they can, you know, really motivates them to count more carefully, and I think for longer than maybe they would because of that connection to real science. Since some of you have come in through the lens of PBS or SciGirls or maybe NGCP and are less familiar with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology or birds. Why birds? Why is birds a good lens for doing nature-based education and citizen science? Feel free to share your ideas in the chat window, especially those of you that are already sold on this concept of using birds to engage youth. You can just probably look at this picture and get some clues. Kathy, you're a good spokesman for the lab. They're found easily and are amazing to watch. So we've got people logged in from all over the world. I would challenge anybody to say they don't have birds in their backyard or in their local community. Yeah, they're super reliable to see. They're just about everywhere, from the most rural areas of Mexico or Colombia to the most urban areas of St. Paul or Central Florida or wherever you are. Katie bringing up that birds can be a great barometer for the health of the environment. True. They're literally the canary in the coal mine. One thing that I appreciate about birds is, at least here in upstate New York, where it's, you know, snowy and cold right now, birds are still here and they change seasonally. There are cool patterns to be observed. If we wanted to do a bug study right now, we would be very hard pressed, but birds are out there. Besides, if you look at this, as Tatiana said, humans just like birds. Look at the beautiful colors. Reds, oranges, yellows, they're colorful, they fly, they sing. They kind of capture our imagination. So I think even if you're not used to using birds as a teaching tool, or maybe have never participated in citizen science projects related to birds, you know, animals outdoors, whether it's birds or another type of creature, I think capture students' interest and enjoyment. They're captivating. It's cool to have the opportunity to watch wild animals. It's something I didn't get to do much in school, so I think it's great that today's kids were getting them outside to do these kinds of things in classrooms. And that third pillar that I mentioned, which we're moving into now, is what teachers have told us repeatedly is that taking kids outside, whether just to, you know, be out in nature or do nature-based education, or letting them do things like bird observation and citizen science, it's a great way to motivate them to ask questions, especially if you're going out repeatedly over time. Patterns start to arise, questions start to come up. And that's really the basis of that third pillar, inquiry education and student investigations. Let me give you a couple of examples. One is this group of third graders. They won these bird feeders from us as part of a grant program. And they put them up and they couldn't wait for the birds to come, and no birds came. And so the teacher challenged them, well, like, why are the birds not coming? And the kids said, well, this area really looks sad. We ought to build it up. And she challenged them to draw pictures of the kinds of things that they would do to improve this habitat. They wanted to plant fruit trees, and they thought about putting in water sources and different kinds of feeders, bird houses, and really try to better meet the needs of birds for cover and water and space and food. And over time, they actually implemented some of these changes. You know, they put in some new gardens and they did some cleaning and they tried to put in trees and bushes. And then the birds, of course, came and they were super excited. So this is one way of thinking about how connecting kids to their local environment, making observations through Project Feeder Watch or eBird or related project, got them to ask questions, got them to care about their environment, and really turned into an amazing project for the school. And they shared their finished bird habitat with us. This was a school in New Jersey. Here's another example of an inquiry project. Amy was watching birds with her family for Project Feeder Watch, which is a backyard bird project. And she noticed, or thought she noticed, that when the neighbor's cat was outdoors, fewer birds were coming to her feeders. And so she said, you know what, I'm going to do a study about this, because her teacher required a science fair project for 2 weeks. She said, well, I can't really, you know, keep the cat outside, the neighbor's cat tethered to the tree, but I'm going to use my stuffed animal and he'll guard the tree. She put him up for 1 week. And what she found, that without the cat present, the birds ate more seed than with the cat. So of course she concluded that the cat was a good guard of the feeder. And again, this was generated by her own interest, her own observations. And she described how she thought over time maybe the birds would start to come back because they'd realized the cat was faked. And basically this just led to additional studies and additional questions and ideas, but it was all very student driven. Here's another example. These kids also didn't have to identify birds. They just measured the snow depth with their little rulers and counted the number of birds at the feeder depending on the depth of snow. These are kindergarten students. And again, they're just, making these observations, and they have the question, well, when it's snowing, will more or fewer birds come? And then they go and test it out. That's really kind of a description of that third pillar of inquiry. And I think hopefully starting to see how all of these three pillars are in some ways connected. One of our goals throughout all of our work in the Cornell Lab K-12 program is to build student science identity. Many of you might be familiar with the classic Draw a Scientist test, when you basically challenge your students at the beginning of the year, hey, can you draw what a scientist look like? And overall, most students draw a scientist that looks like Einstein. Big hair, blowing something up, chemicals, a white lab coat, usually a male. And what some of our teachers are reporting back to us, and we've got a research study started now looking at how we're building science identity. This teacher, quote from her that started in my school year, which was fantastic. She started with new groups. She asked the kids to draw a scientist. 98% of the girls drew a girl scientist. A few kids of color drew a scientist of color. Half the kids drew their scientist outside. And this is something that she's seen just in the 3 or 4 years that she's been doing this bird club that she started, a real change in her students. And I think on that note, I'll just remind you of the 3 pillars and ask that you keep those things in mind as Leah shares more with us about the SciGirl strategies. And just so that it doesn't feel like a pop quiz at the end, I'll let you know that at the end we'd love to have a discussion with whoever can stay, like a chat discussion, thinking about the ways that these 3 pillars are connected to the SciGirl strategy. So that's kind of the big picture. And Leah, we will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Fantastic. And I'll just say that I'll give you all hints as well. So we'll keep that in our mind. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Leah Defenbaugh, and I am Outreach Manager for SciGirls. So I'm just curious, if you can write in the chat box, how many of you have heard of SciGirls, watched our TV show, anything like that? Let me know. While you're doing that, I'll tell you a little bit about us. So we are... Oh, I'm sorry to say that I have not. Great. That means that we have a new audience. So we are media and education that change how girls see STEM and how the world sees girls. We are a TV show that, if any of you have heard of Newton's Apple or Dragonfly TV, we grew out of that, and I am at Twin Cities Public Television, which is a station that has 30 years of experience producing science television for kids. Oh, good. Some people took a workshop. Oh, so citizen science season. Fantastic. We, in that time, in the 30 years that we've been producing science content for children, we've just seen more and more in our research the need for underrepresented groups, especially girls, to have that science identity that Jen shared. And so our goal with SciGirls is to encourage underrepresented young people to consider the world of STEM. So we are on TV. We're a national PBS Kids series, which just debuted its 5th season, which is all on computer science, last Thursday. So you can go to the PBS website or YouTube or your local PBS station and watch us there. We are online. We also debuted a cool new game called Code Quest, where you can take a little submarine and code it to go around and help pick up up things to build an aquarium, and we're on the ground doing, or on the internet, doing things like this, activities, professional development, and as much as possible, we try to keep things free or very low cost. All right, so check us out. Our Rule the Roost games and other games will be coming back soon, but we are completely interactive and COPA compliant, which is the status that you have to keep your kids safe on the internet. And we have a network of girl serving partner organizations called SciGirls Connect, which you can go to on scigirlsconnect.org, and you can connect with other people who are doing similar programs to yours. You can see all of our video resources, and again, everything is free. So why do we do what we do? I know the numbers are getting old, we're updating them soon, but as you'll see, in high school, if you look really closely there, the red line is boys and the green line, or no, the red line is girls and the green line is boys. Girls are outperforming boys in math and science, which some people are quite surprised by. I was surprised when I first saw it. And it means that it's not that girls can't do math and science. They're clearly at the high school level achieving. When you get to bachelor's degrees, you'll see that in some bioscience and social sciences, girls are at or above 50% of the bachelor's degrees that are awarded every year. And this is from the Department of Ed. However, do you see any trends where the girls are still lagging behind? I'm seeing computer science, engineering, and physics, where we're still at 1 in 5 bachelor's degrees awarded are to women. When you get to employment, life science actually dips below 50%, and it just goes down from there. So what we're trying to do, along with Cornell and other amazing educational partners, is to harness that science identity early, show girls that they can do this, hook them up with other people who are doing this, and hopefully turn some of those numbers around. So what does it all mean? It means that boys and girls don't display differences in their abilities in STEM. The cause is social and environmental. And it's all about interest and confidence linked to negative self-perception enhanced by stereotypes, which is a huge mouthful. So that's the bummer part of this presentation. And now we get to the good part. For those of you who have heard of SciGirls before, you've probably heard of the SciGirls 7. They are strategies for engaging girls in STEM. And we just did a redo of the strategies, went through and did a literature review and looked at all of the research around this, and found that for the most part, the strategies we've been using for the past 10 years are still accurate, with some slight changes. And so what I'm going to show you is brand new-ish. And if you have heard of SciGirls before, you may want to keep in mind what's new, what's different, what's interesting. So there used to be 7 strategies. Now there are 6 strategies and 2 framing concepts. So the framing concepts are the STEM for All learning environment and culturally responsive teaching strategies. So what I want you to do is write in the chat box, just be as silly as possible. What creates the least welcoming STEM environment? What does the physical space look like? How do people interact? Are people happy at each other? Are they yelling at each other? Ooh, a lecture setup. That's a good one. Being talked at like I'm doing at you now, so we're going to change that. What else? Oh, you have to be perfect. Crowded. So having, indoors, I like that. Terrible paper towels. Oh my goodness. Those terrible paper towels is so spot on that I can't get over it. But as you're and no mistakes, exactly. So as you're thinking about that, think about where those ideas came from. Was it something that you had experienced, or that classmates or kids or friends of yours experienced, and how did it make them think about science and their part in it? So what we want is to create an environment that is the opposite of everything that you just said. So we want it to be culturally responsive, which means that it's student-centered and it's drawing on the strengths of the students who are there. It could be their languages, their cultural knowledge and prior experience, and it really, not hands-on. It really is requiring you to learn about your students and respect their cultural knowledge and adjust your practices around that. So I want you to think of the iceberg, the cultural iceberg, and see what you see in folks' culture, what's observable, like, you know, their style of dress, their language, and what's non-observable, like their beliefs. And my favorite is I went to a Somali cultural center because I was doing an after-school program there, and they said arrive at 2 o'clock. So think, if you have a program that starts at 2 o'clock, what time do you arrive? So I arrived at 1:45, and they said, well, did you bring extra activities? And I said, no, the program starts at 2. The program started at 4, but I hadn't taken the time to be culturally responsive and understand what time meant. So I was only thinking in my culture. So those sorts of things are very important. All right, and then a STEM for all learning environment is exactly what it sounds like, being comfortable and personally meaningful and validating youth. So keep those as overarching umbrellas to the 6 strategies. The first one is connecting STEM experiences to girls' lives. So this really goes with the nature connection, or I saw it as going with the nature connection that Cornell and Jen talked about. What is in their background? What is in their interest? What is in their community? What's going on in their school that they can help with? That can really help create good engagement and excitement for youth. Number 2, support girls as they investigate questions and solve problems using STEM practices. This one may be kind of scary for people who don't have a lot of scientific background or knowledge, but if you think about asking questions, identifying problems, the inquiry investigations that Jen talked about, really what we want is for young girls and young people to look at the world through the lens of scientific and engineering practices and identifying and solving problems that way. Number 3, empower girls to embrace struggle, overcome challenges, and increase self-confidence in STEM. This is all about growth mindset and how, and if any of you have heard of Carol Dweck and the book Growth Mindset. It's a really great read, and I would suggest it. It goes back to the being perfect that we said that we didn't want in a science classroom. You need to be able to make mistakes. You need to be able to tackle difficult problems and know that you're not going to be perfect. You're going to need to explore, fail, and then try again. And Kelly has some awesome, oh, what is the book again? The book is called Growth Mindset, and the author is Carol Dweck. So I'm gonna type that in there. Highly recommend it. There are also many TED Talks and other things on this. All right. Encourage girls to identify and challenge STEM stereotypes. This one is is sometimes difficult for girls and for their youth leaders because stereotypes are sometimes so ingrained that you don't necessarily know what they are until you're up against them. But that draw a scientist activity, for instance, what are the stereotypes that go into who you draw as a scientist? And how do you challenge them? Well, you talk about people, you have scientists into your group or your classroom, and you really work to change who you see doing science and what they are doing. And thanks, Jen, for putting more growth mindset information in there. All right, number 5, emphasize that STEM is collaborative, social, and community-oriented. This is where citizen science really excites me and gets me really thrilled to get out and be there with my neighbors. The young people that Jen talked about, they were out there helping in their community and they were working together. They weren't in a lab by themselves. Sometimes some science is in a lab by yourself, but it's also where girls are and doing the things that girls are already doing. So by identifying the citizen science projects, for example, in their neighborhoods and how they can go ahead and help make their communities better, girls can get way more excited, and youth in general can get excited about STEM and excited about the process of melding that science into their identity. And finally, number 6, provide opportunities for girls to interact with and learn from diverse STEM role models. You might see that some of these strategies overlap a little bit. But have any of you ever had a STEM role model come into your program, or have you served as a role model for other programs? Can you write that in there? And just a quick who you had, what they did. I never know in these webinars how long to employ the teacher. I'll wait. Steven has a great idea. Thank you. I'm kind of excited by the pause because, oh, a live chat with a scientist from Cornell. Fantastic. I'm kind of excited by the pause because I hear from a lot of educators, we don't know anybody. We don't know any scientists. We don't know any scientists that come from similar backgrounds to the kids we teach. And I say, oh, some former students or some students, ooh, live chat, awesome. To which I say, I can find you a role model. So the National Girls Collaborative Project is something some of you may have heard of. It brings girl-serving organizations, STEM girl-serving organizations together. And One of the things that they have created that I absolutely love is FabFems. You can go to fabfems.org. The web address is right up there. And you can click on Find a Role Model, and you can click on your geographic area. I would suggest going by state rather than city, just to get the most people. You can look by kind of role model you want, what their career is, what kind of, do you want to visit? Do you want an after school visit? Do you want to Skype in like live chat Fridays? And then you can look by race and ethnicity. So you can, if you have a group of African American girls who want to see African American scientists, that's fantastic. We have Bridget, she's a chemist, she's from 3M, and she's ready to Skype in and chat with your girls. The best part about this website is that everyone has been background checked, and we have resources to train them as well to give a good site visit. Oh, and Jen says they're looking for people to become role models too. Absolutely. So under Find a Role Model, you'll see Become a Role Model. I would highly encourage you to do that, and we are threatening to reach out to you. We definitely will. All right, so please head to fabfems.org to become or find a role model. You can also go to scigirlsconnect.org and find all of our activities that we write that have the strategies in mind, a longer explanation of the SciGirl strategies along with all of our research and notes about how we came up with these strategies. Thanks, Kelly, for posting that. And some videos that you can download, because I know that the internet connection isn't always great where you are. So you can download anything you want and take it with you so you don't have to worry about your internet not working. And if you're looking for more, again, my name is Leah. I have quite the last name, but I'll type it in there too, Defenbaugh@tpt.org. And I'm really excited to chat with you and connect with you about anything related to girls in science. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jen, and
Thanks.
She will finish this up. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Leah, so much for sharing those ideas. I'm going to share a link in the chat now to the one-pager of the SciGirl strategies, just so folks have that available as we kind of finish up, and you'd be thinking about the connections between what I was sharing and what Leah was sharing. Okay, let me get my screen back shared. All right. And to piggyback on Leah's contact information, you can contact the K-12 lab as well on Twitter, Facebook, our website, and email, and Kelly will enter those things into the chat window so that you have them handy for us as well. So I'd like to wrap up this conversation. I know we're a little bit early. That's on purpose because we really wanted to give everyone time to ask the questions that you may have and hopefully have some discussion and sharing time. So we absolutely welcome your questions, but we also have some questions for you. Maybe it's reflection questions on your own teaching and hopefully perhaps advice that you might share with others on this webinar. Leah and I were curious about the intersections you notice between nature, citizen science, and inquiry and the SciGirl strategies. Again, I shared that PDF with you so that you can look at the strategies there if you'd like. And we're also curious what's worked for you personally to make your program or teaching more culturally relevant and gender equitable. And what are the impacts of some of the things that you've done? As Leah shared, the side growth strategies are all research-based and have a very, very solid scientific backing and grounding in the educational literature for the things that she suggested. I think we're just curious to share and to hear from you all about, what you've done and the impacts that you've experienced. And of course, as always, we appreciate and will love to answer your questions or dig into anything that we've shared.
Hi, Betty. A recording of this webinar will be available to you on our YouTube channel, probably on Friday, and I'll send a link to everybody who is registered.
Great. Diane suggesting that her students are most engaged when they're outside in the school garden or gathering citizen science projects. Do you notice, Diane, and Beatrice too, who's sharing about the importance of nature sparking the connection, what some teachers have described to me is that the students who don't excel in traditional seated classrooms are the kinds of students that are especially engaged when you're outside doing these kinds of things. And I'm wondering if people have those kinds of experiences. That actually the kids that maybe your problem students, if you're doing sort of a sit and get experience, are some of your top performers are really engaged in these more active experiences. Yeah, Kathy, I appreciate your reflection that inquiry just naturally flows from nature-based activities, and I find that to be so true. In my own experience too, just as an adult learner, when I'm outside, I'm naturally asking questions. Yep. I do wonder if there's something to this idea of nature deficit disorder and the attention difficulties that students have, and they're being more relaxed in nature. I see it with my own kids and the Girl Scout troop that Kelly and I lead. When we get them outside, they're a little bit nicer to us and to each other, I'd say. Has to be hands-on for sure. Leah, integrating art and science. Teaching art or teaching science through the lens of art. Maybe you don't think of yourself as traditionally science-minded if you're a student, but maybe you could be reached through other subjects.
And teaching science through art also connects STEM experiences to your young people's lives and gets them where they're already excited and interested, and then adds on to that. So there's already a good hook.
Oh, Tixie, I love that story. Really bringing kids, helping them reach their potential and getting them out of their comfort zone or out of their shells a little bit, perhaps. I'm curious, Tixie, to hear about the aftermath of that. Did it enable him to speak up more outside of the garden, or was it just that you found only in the garden is when the student really shares his ideas? Mm-hmm. Peer teaching, older students teaching younger. Oh, fantastic. Well, I should mention, we understand that some people, they may have other things to get to and want to log off, but we'll continue to hang out here and chat and dialogue with everybody and encourage you all to make connections among yourselves if that's desired. Kelly and I will send out a list of links following the webinar too, so that, you can continue to maybe dig into some of the resources you aren't familiar with, like the growth mindset or side growth strategies or Fab Fems. We'll be sure that you get all those links. Leah?
How do you isolate girls?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. How do you
Yeah,
isolate girls who need extra support? That's a good question. So I don't know if you pronounced your name Tixie. Could you say, are you isolating? Are you doing it? What is your job right now? Because we have after school programs that are girls only. We have science programs that are girls only. Sometimes that's a struggle in different schools and politics within schools. So sometimes we also look at group work as a great way to really look at being intentional with the groups that we set and focusing on girls and gender non-conforming kids in those groups. So we mostly work in out of school time, but you can do it in school time through some intentional group work.
Leah, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things that really jumped out at me whenever I took the Sci Girls training and have really, considered the strategies is that it's not like these strategies are girls only, they're girl supporting. And they really work well for all students, no matter boys, girls. They're just designed to work well for all students, but especially serve girls well. So it's not like you don't want to use these strategies with boys. They're just especially useful with girls. Am I saying
that? Yeah, that's exactly right. We call ourselves girl-focused and boy-friendly. And the couple of strategies where there's a special target toward girls are in role models, because it's important for all young people to see role models that are girls and role models that are in other underrepresented groups. And then also in the growth mindset, because of the way that many cultures within the US raise girls and boys, the perfection message is driven more at girls. So you don't necessarily have to separate them, but you need to be very explicit when you're talking about who is a scientist, about what you're going to focus your after school group to be like, that you are focused on the fact that girls can accomplish anything that they want to, and boys should be excited to see girls accomplish anything that they want to. How frequently do Sci Girls trainings occur? We're kind of on a hiatus right now because we are creating a new full day training around our new / updated strategies. But they do happen all around the US, and we have a group of about 80 trainers who we've trained to go out and do trainings. So I will, the National Girls Collaborative Project hosts our training schedule, so I will get that information to Jen and she'll send it out to everybody.
Awesome, happy to do that.
Mm-hmm. What are year-round activities in a city park section, Jen?
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else on the chat can see Diane's question. The question is year-round activities to use in a city park setting. They're looking to write a grant to dig a pond in our local park and are looking for out-of-school programs. So we've got a community online. If anybody has other ideas beyond what we'll share, please feel free.
And something that comes to mind is Celebrate Urban Birds, which is a citizen science and learning project from the lab here. And it can be done any time of year. It focuses on 16 focused species that occur in a lot of urban settings. And so that could be a really cool thing to pair with your pond, doing like before and after counts with through Celebrate Urban Birds. There could be some cool stuff there.
We also have, if you're looking for programs that meet multiple times, the investigating evidence curriculum that we shared earlier, the inquiry-based program, it really takes you through making observations, asking questions, collecting data. It kind of supports you in doing the kinds of experiments like Amy's cat experiment or that feeder snow depth experiment. So if you're having kids come for repeated visits, that could be a cool way to do it. You know, like looking at the impacts of the pond, looking at bird changes seasonally, doing citizen science counts. Those are the kinds of things that spring to mind. Mm-hmm. There are classic out of school time activity guides like Project Wet and Project Wild, Project Learning Tree. Those are more kind of pick and choose hands-on activities. Versus
there's also a
curriculum.
SciGrowth Citizen Science Guide that Cornell really helped us with, that you can feel free to use our activities.
And also encourage you to just look on the Cornell Lab K-12 website. We've got a drop-down menu of free resources and kit-based resources on our site. And I'll send a link to that in the follow-up email. And email us if you have further questions and you really want to, you know, hone in on something like citizen science or whatever. Oh, yes, Feathered Friends. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a great year-round program. It's our program. We didn't think of it, Kelly. Feathered Friends is a series, one activity a month focused on feeder birds. So you could put up a feeder, for example, next to your pond or a feeder array and use it that way.
We have a good friend at Atlanta Audubon, Tixie. Have you been in contact with Melanie Furr?
No, she's still there. Okay, I think. Awesome. She's a great partner. Tixie, let us know if you want us to read it or reflect on that with you. Let us know. I'd be happy to.
You can always email us at k12lab@cornell.edu.
Melanie is on our educator advisory board, so she knows us. She knows us really well. That's awesome. I'm so glad we made this connection. Well, Kelly and Leah, since you probably have access to the chat window, are there any things that we missed or anything that you want to say to sum up in our last 2 or 3 minutes together?
I really appreciated Tatiana mentioning that where she's working in Mexico, creating a women's group for birding, that sometimes the first hurdle is exploring why it would be important to have an all-women's group. So there's an extra like cultural aspect to creating effective groups of women working together.
Tatiana, if you're on Facebook, there's a Facebook group called World Girl Birder. I think it's World Girl Birder.
I don't know.
I joined it. It's awesome. You should join it. But if you're interested in birding as female, that's a great resource. World Girl Birders, I think it is. And they share some of these same things, like what are the particular World Girl Birders? The particular challenges that women face, you know, in going out and sometimes by themselves and being on personal property or public property. Anyway, very cool. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Boy, do I really appreciate your attendance. We are repeating this webinar again on Thursday. So if you have any constructive criticism for us or feedback on tonight's format, it's a rather new format for us. We would really appreciate hearing from you via email. You can email us at k12lab@cornell.edu with any feedback.
I also want to let you know that it is possible to get a completion letter for us for 1 hour of contact. So if you would need that for your professional development purposes, again, just send us an email at k12lab@cornell.edu and we'll hook you up with a PDF completion letter.
And again, don't hesitate to give us feedback about tonight's format and what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, since it's a new format for us. Or use the chat window if you're not shy. We really appreciate your attendance tonight, and thank you so much for giving me some things to think about too. I can say that I learned something tonight as well, which is awesome for me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Leah, for being on with us. I appreciate this collaboration and you jumping into it at the last minute and doing such an amazing job and making the connection.
Oh, thanks so much. I look forward to doing it on Thursday with everyone that, that our friends here recommend to come see us.
Thank you, Phyllis. We're so glad you joined us tonight. I appreciate it. Caitlin, Tixie, so nice to make the connection. I appreciate it. And as always, Kathy, awesome to have you on. All right, we are going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining us. And I appreciate, Kathy, that you like the new format. I think it's a keeper. Leah, do you want to stay on and chat at all, Leah, or are you good?
I'm good. I personally thought this went great, and I loved hearing from you, and I love making connections. So if you're good, I'm good.
All right, me too. Let's do it again on Thursday unless we get some other feedback.
Let's do it. All right.
Thanks.